I failed my rich uncle's $1,000 test because I thought like a poor man. The day my rich uncle tested me with $1,000, I thought I had finally gotten lucky. I thought he was about to change my life. Instead, that test exposed the way I was thinking, and that moment forced me to face a painful truth about myself. The problem was never the money. The problem was my mindset. My uncle was the richest man in our family. While everyone else struggled from paycheck to paycheck, he owned businesses, properties, and investments in different countries. People used to say he was just lucky, but I noticed something different. He thought differently, he spoke differently, and he made decisions differently. One evening, after a long family dinner, he called me aside. He looked at me for a few seconds and said something strange. "Tell me honestly, why are you still broke?" The question hit me like a punch. I tried to laugh it off. I told him things everyone says. The economy is hard. Opportunities are not easy. Life is expensive. He listened quietly. Then he smiled. Not a mocking smile, but the smile of someone who had heard those excuses 1,000 times. Then he reached into his pocket. He pulled out his wallet, and he placed $1,000 on the table. My heart started beating faster. $1,000. At that time, that amount could change many things for me. I thought he was about to give me money out of kindness, but instead, he leaned closer and said something that changed everything. "This is a test." He pushed the money toward me. "You have exactly 30 days to turn this $1,000 into something bigger. No help from me, no borrowing, no excuses, just your brain." Then he leaned back in his chair. "Let's see how you think." At that moment, I felt confident. I believed I would easily succeed. After all, how hard could it be? I took the money home that night feeling powerful, but I had already made my first mistake. I saw the money as something to spend, not something to grow. And that is how poor thinking begins. The next morning, my mind started racing. I began thinking about all the things I needed: my rent, my phone, my clothes, my friends. I convinced myself that if I used some of the money to fix my life, I would be in a better position to grow the rest. So I spent some of it. Just a little, I told myself. But little spending adds up quickly. First, I bought a new phone because I said my old one was slowing me down. Then I bought clothes because I said I needed to look successful. Then I went out with friends because I said networking was important. Within a few days, the $1,000 had started shrinking, and something strange happened. The more I spent, the harder it became to think of ways to grow the money. My brain had switched into consumer mode. Instead of asking, "How can I multiply this?" I was asking, "What else do I need?" That is when poor thinking traps you. It convinces you that spending will somehow improve your life. But spending rarely creates wealth. It only creates temporary comfort. 2 weeks passed, half the money was gone, and I still had no real plan. That's when panic started. I rushed into a random business idea. I bought products online, hoping to resell them quickly. But I had no research, no strategy, no market. I was just guessing. A few days later, the product sat there unsold. My money was now almost finished, and the deadline was approaching. 30 days came faster than I expected. Finally, the day arrived to meet my uncle again. I walked into his office feeling embarrassed. He didn't ask any questions at first. He simply looked at me and asked one thing: "How much did you make?" I stayed silent. He already knew the answer. Then he asked another question: "How much is left?" I told him the truth: almost nothing. He nodded slowly. Then he asked the question that destroyed my pride: "Did you spend the money or did you invest it?" I couldn't answer, because deep down, I knew the truth. I had failed the test. Not because the opportunity was bad, but because my thinking was small. My uncle leaned forward and said something I will never forget. Poor people believe money is meant to be spent. Rich people believe money is meant to be multiplied. Then he continued, when I was your age, if someone gave me $1,000, I wouldn't think about what I could buy. I would think about what business it could start, what skill it could build, what asset it could create. That was the difference. I had been trained my entire life to think like a consumer, buy things, enjoy things, upgrade things. But wealth is not built by consumption. Wealth is built by ownership. My uncle then explained something powerful. He said there are 3 ways people think about money. The first mindset is the poor mindset. This person believes money is scarce. When they receive money, they rush to spend it before it disappears. Their focus is survival, not growth. The second mindset is the middle class mindset. This person tries to manage money. They save it, they protect it, they're careful with it, but they still rely on jobs and salaries. They work for money. But the third mindset is the wealth mindset. This person sees money as a tool. They ask one question over and over again. How can this money create more money? That single question changes everything. My uncle then said something even more painful. The amount I gave you was not important. The test was never about the money. It was about your thinking. If I gave you $1 million today, you would lose it because your mindset would treat it the same way. That truth hit me hard. Most people believe money will solve their problems, but money only amplifies who you already are. If you think like a consumer, more money means more spending. If you think like an investor, more money means more opportunities. My uncle then told me about his own story. When he was young, someone once gave him a small amount of money too. Instead of spending it, he used it to buy simple products. He sold them at a small profit, then he reinvested the profit again, and again, and again. That small habit eventually became businesses. Those businesses became assets. Those assets created freedom, and freedom created wealth. Then he looked at me and said something that changed my life. The difference between poor people and rich people is not intelligence, it is habits. Rich people build habits that grow money. Poor people build habits that shrink money. The moment he said that, everything started making sense. I realized I had been repeating the same pattern for years. Every time I received money, it disappeared. Not because I was unlucky, but because I never gave it a job. Money without purpose will always leave you. That night, I went home and sat alone. For the first time, I stopped blaming the world. I stopped blaming the economy. And I started questioning my own thinking. What if the real problem was not opportunity? What if the real problem was me? That realization hurt, but it was also freeing. Because if the problem was my mindset, then the solution was also within my control. From that day forward, I started studying how rich people think. I noticed something interesting. They rarely talk about money itself. Instead, they talk about systems, businesses, assets, skills, ownership. They focus on building things that produce money repeatedly, while most people chase money once and spend it once. I also learned another powerful lesson. Money respects discipline. If you cannot manage $1,000, you will not manage $100,000. If you cannot grow a small opportunity, you will not grow a large one. Wealth grows in stages, but it begins in the mind. The test my uncle gave me was not meant to embarrass me. It was meant to wake me up. And honestly, I needed that wake-up call, because that failure forced me to change the way I see money forever. Today, when money enters my life, I ask a different question. Not what can I buy, but what can I build? because buying feels good for a moment, but building changes your future. And if you're watching this right now, you might be facing the same invisible test. Maybe no rich uncle handed you $1,000, but every paycheck, every opportunity, every idea is a test of your mindset. Do you consume it, or do you multiply it? Do you chase comfort, or do you build freedom? The truth is simple. Most people fail this test every day, not because they lack talent, but because they think small. They think short-term. They think like consumers. But the moment you start thinking like a builder, everything changes. Opportunities appear, ideas grow, confidence increases, and money starts flowing differently. The lesson my uncle taught me that day was worth more than the one